completed job tickets, and other day-to-day activity. Therefore, one card can be used to update all the records it affects. To do this, it seeks out any record wherever it is located in the file. This is random access processing.
But how does this actually help management?
By printing out reports or answering inquiries on things like shop order status, schedule exceptions, work in process status, working priority lists, inventory status, and bill of material, and all other reports management needs to make sound decisions. This is a management operating system for manufacturing. Of course, Chet, the 1440 system is a profit tool for all kinds of business. All businesses need up-to-date information to manage.
I follow you. The 1440 can do the routine jobs faster than ever before, but it also provides smaller company management with a decision-making tool never available until today.
That's the way we're thinking about the 1440. We know we've crossed a threshold.
Well, thank you, Dan, for a highly informative interview. You have indeed widened our viewpoint.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chet.
Thank you, and good afternoon, David. I mean, Dan. Now you've seen the 1440 system in action. In our brief visit to San Jose, certainly all your questions could not be answered. Even more important, many new questions have come to mind. For this reason, we've asked 4 specialists from IBM to join us. It will be the job of the panel to dig a little deeper with us. The members of the panel are John Iverson, Bill Kelly, Tom McDonald, and Jim Frame. Together, they represent systems engineering, education planning, industry marketing, and applied programming. Now, I fully realize that many of the details of data processing are beyond the ken of the ordinary layman. To be quite honest, these same details challenge the background, certainly, of a mere television journalist. So I have asked for a little help. It is my pleasure, therefore, to present to you Dr. Gerhard Bree, Professor of Economics at the Graduate School of Business Administration in New York University.
Hello, Chet and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Dr. Bree completed graduate studies at Heidelberg and Columbia. He is presently on the staff of the National Bureau of Economic Research in charge of projects on application of electronic computing to economic analysis. He is also the author of dozens of articles concerning the business uses of data processing systems, and he has worked independently as a consulting economist. Doctor, I'd appreciate it if you would draw from your excellent and extensive background to ask the kind of questions that might well come from members of our audience. I'm sure that you are well acquainted with problems that these business people face every day. However, to start the panel thinking, I should like to ask first for a precise definition of a term which we have used here several times, namely, management tool. What do you mean?
Chet, I'd like to tackle that first one, if I may. I think we saw from the presentation in San Jose that a management tool depends on 2 things. It depends on accurate facts, and it depends on timely facts. And the value of a management tool hinges on the accuracy and the timeliness of these facts. And I think the important thing to remember here is that we must be always aware of how we're determining the real value to a business of a management information system. And I can show that here with a small chart, if I may. Let's suppose that we're setting our corporate profit objectives over a period of time, and our plan is to arrive sometime out in the future at a certain profit point. Now, as we begin actual practice, we begin operating underneath this standard, and it takes us a certain length of time before we even realize that we are underneath this standard. It takes an additional length of time to arrive at some corrective action, and then, of course, all action takes a time to really take effect, and so this is an additional length of time. We finally get in gear sometime out here in the future, and we arrive at some profit point here. Now, with a management information system in a practice, we might sense this substandard activity sooner. Based on the accurate facts, we could come up with a solution sooner, and although the time to actually take effect might not be increased at all, we would get in gear sooner. We'd arrive at a higher profit point finally. And we could say then that the difference between those 2 points would be termed the value of our management system.
May I start my questioning you? You seem to stress the role of information. Now, is really the main value of the computer to give you more facts sooner? If I may make a distinction between facts and analysis, can you not get beyond the assembly and the organization of facts? For instance, what can the computer do in the field of sales analysis?
Let me again field this one. In the field of sales analysis, we could, for instance, store within the disk pack both sales this year and sales last year, and by item let the computer compare one against the other, and possibly type out on the typewriter those items that are drastically, let's say, below last year's sales.
Now this is, again, a relatively simple application. Can you, for instance, do things like carrying through seasonal adjustments or even simple forecasting operation? Is that possible?
Doctor, I think now you're getting into this whole area of what's sometimes called management science, and it's this using of various statistical techniques to either forecast or analyze or optimize the portions of a business. And I'd say the 1440 is an ideal candidate in this area.
Well, let me quite frankly tell you what I'm bothered about. You see, this computer has a relatively small processing memory. And my question is whether these somewhat more complex techniques can be operated on this computer in view of the small processing memory.
Dr. Bree, the main memory, as you've indicated, is 4,000 characters. You can get an extension up to 8,000 characters, and this is relatively small memory. However, as was shown in the earlier section, with the removable disk packs, you essentially have limitless storage, and you're only really limited by the application or your knowledge of the application that you want to put on.
Do you mean to say you can also store partly the programs in this disk pack?
Oh yes, that's what I say. You have really infinite logic that can go on these disk packs. If you had a 100,000 step program, you could store it on a succession of disk packs.
A question occurs to me, gentlemen. Is the 1440 limited to small business only, or does it have wider application?
Chet, I'd like to answer that. The 1440 can be used by either small or large business. We would like to have you go away today with the feeling that the 1440 was announced specifically for the smaller company to take advantage of a computer, which up till now they haven't been able to do so.
Yeah. In general, for the simple or the more complex applications, to what extent does IBM help the individual company in terms of prepared programs and similar things?
Well, for years, if I may, gentlemen, I'd like to answer that. For years, IBM has had specialists in various industries. And I think this is what you're referring to, Doctor, such as insurance, manufacturing, retail, transportation, etc.
Well, that's one application. Another problem is also methods, generalized methods.
And generalized methods in any one of these particular industries. Yeah. Well, a few years ago, we feel that we took 2 major steps forward as far as servicing the user of the computer. And that was, number one, to specialize right down to the branch office and to the sales representative, to specialize his knowledge by industry. And we've held what we call advanced industry schools, covering retail, covering insurance, manufacturing, etc. So that the first step to help the user of the computer is to give him a knowledgeable, specialized representative. The second step is to give him all the necessary support material that he needs to go out to the prospective user and give him a better appreciation as to how he can use this computer. And I think generally we can say that you design a system, and then after you design it, after you design the overall system, you then put the logic of the system inside the framework. And then once this is done, you actually program the job to be put on the computer. Well, now, as far as support material and what we have available for the 1440, for instance, here is a application write-up of a management operating system for a manufacturing concern. Now, this is not the executive approach, but then again, it's not the detailed programming approach. It has the logic spelled out in here as to how you go about it. Its feasibility has been proved by a demonstration. Now, further than that, we have, say, demand deposit in banking. The demand deposit application has been not only charted and the logic established, but has been detailed programmed in what we refer to as a programmed application. And this is what I think you're referring to, the second part of your question.
What is actually your experience? Can usually, let us say, banks use a standardized program? I would think that there might be differences in the requirements which would necessitate modification. What's your experience there?
We have found from experience in the last few years that a bank can use these applications, normally to the extent of about 70 to 80%. Let's say there are approximately 6 runs to the program. They may not use one of the runs entirely. They may use 99% of the remaining runs. But generally speaking, it can be used about 80%. It has to be modified 20%.
Well, that brings us to the problem of program modification. Is this very difficult, and who does it? Are you people doing it, or are employees of the companies doing it?
Well, program modification, to me, brings to mind the fact that we have to start with education.
Yeah, that's where I'd like to take over the answer to that question, Doctor. I think that one of the things we noticed about today's announcement is that we are seeing that we're taking the common parts of the data processing problem. We've been able to identify them. We've been able to simplify them to the point where they are now within the reach of the small businessman. And we are prepared to conduct an education program for the employees of these small businesses so that they themselves will be the ones who will do the work of modifying, who will put their problems into the 1440 for execution.
You mean to say that, for instance, the typical administrators of a punch card operation now could learn this type of programming and program modification? Maybe you tell us a little bit about what kind of training time might be required.
Well, Dr. Bree, the education program that has been planned for the 1440 is made up of 8 courses. Each of these courses is designed for a particular person within the customer organization to give him the amount of information he needs when he needs it. These courses range in duration from 1 day for the seminar for the executives through the 3-day course to learn the report program generator up to the 2-week course in basic programming to understand the nature of the job of the programmer.
Now then, just what are the steps involved in acquiring the system and having one that operates and gets results?
I'd like to feel that one again, Chet, if I may. I think we're talking here of the whole area of how do I go about actually installing a system and what happens. And here we can discuss the responsibilities of the IBM salesman and the IBM systems engineer as he in his relations to the customer. As soon after the decision is made to go to a 1440 as possible, it's the responsibility of the salesman and the systems engineer to sit down with our customer and establish a firm schedule of events leading up finally to the installation of the computer. And such things would be reviewed as the system itself to make sure that it is the right system for the job. And we'd also review the education to see that a firm program has been set up, as Bill just outlined in his educational program, to see that the key customer personnel get to the right course at the right time. Another thing to be considered here is the physical installation. We have to make sure that the wall plugs are there and so on to bring the computer in. And finally, and probably most important, you have to set up a procedure whereby you can convert from the way you're doing things now to the way you're going to do them on the 1440 to make sure that adequate controls are kept during this whole cycle. And I would say this is generally the procedure in the installation program.
I'm not sure whether this is the point to ask it, but occasionally a phrase crops up here, and I'd like to get a definition of it if I can. What do you fellows mean by a report program generator?
Oh, Chet, let me feel that one also. Report program generator refers to two things: a program itself, which does the job, and it also refers to a language. Now, in the report program generator, a good way to talk or to think about it, it's really a program that a customer does not have to program. He simply states, in terms with which he is familiar, the specifications of a desired report, and he chunks this into the 1440 along with the report program generator program itself, which is a canned program which the user never touches. And this then very simply turns out his desired report. The important fact is that he does not have to go through the laborious task of programming the job. He simply states the specifications of the report, and that's the end.
You might also point out that you can expect that in a typical counting machine calculator installation now existing, that a great majority of the work that is being done can be handled with just this report program generator approach, and the ability to learn this method of doing your work is very universal, and the course itself only takes 3 days.
And well, since we are talking about the way in which you ask questions from the computer, of the computer, how about the use of simplified programming languages, which we now use at other computer systems? I'm thinking of things like the autocoder or similar things.
Yes, Dr. Bree, in our earlier discussion of programming, we missed an area of it, and that is applied programming. Whereas the programmed application library is aiming at particular industries, applied programming tries to hit all the customers across the board. And for the initial use of the 1440, we have two major categories of programs. The first one I was talking, that Chet mentioned, report program generator, and also in that category comes a sort program. Again, the customer states the characteristics of the file that he wants rearranged in a different order. He simply gives these specifications to the 1440 and the sort program, and his records are rearranged in the desired sequence. So that's one category of programs which we refer to as generators, RPGs and sorts. The second category is the